You feel it as a weight, not pain exactly, but something older, something the body holds before the mind has finished processing it. In your 50s, you stop fighting the tide and start reading it. Not because you have given up, but because you have been in enough water to know the difference between a current that will drown you and one that is simply carrying you somewhere you did not plan to go. What you are feeling right now has been building for weeks. It just did not have a name until tonight. What is happening as the moon conjuncts Baten Kaitos on June 10th at 11:24 p.m. is not a surprise, it is an arrival. And the strange thing, the thing I want to stay with for a while, is that the sky has been preparing you for this longer than you realize. Stay with me until the end of this video. What I will lay out in the final minutes is specific, not general, not symbolic, but a precise reading of what this energy is asking you to do, and, just as importantly, what it is asking you to stop doing. If you skip ahead, you will miss the part that is most likely to apply directly to your life. The signs feeling this most acutely right now are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, Scorpio, and Pisces. And each of you is receiving a different face of the same initiation. Later in this reading, I am going to speak to each of those signs individually, because what this transit activates in an Aries is not what it stirs in a Pisces, and you deserve a reading that actually sees you. Let us begin with what this star actually is, Baten Kaitos. The name translates directly as the belly of the whale. It sits in the constellation Cetus, the sea monster of ancient skies, the creature that swallowed Jonah whole, the beast that lurked at the edge of every map where the known world ended. This is not a gentle star. Its mythological signature is unmistakable. Descent that cannot be scheduled, initiation that cannot be negotiated, a darkness that is not punishment, but preparation. When the moon, ruler of your emotional tides, your instincts, your deepest need for safety and belonging, makes contact with this star, the psyche is pulled into a reckoning with whatever it has been outrunning. Tonight, that moon is in Aries. And here is the paradox that sits at the center of this entire transit. Aries is the sign of forward motion, of instinct, of the reflex to push through difficulty rather than be digested by it. Baten Kaitos asks for exactly the opposite. The star's gift is the wisdom that only comes from remaining inside the difficulty long enough to be transformed by it. The strongest response tonight is not resistance, it is willingness. Stop, feel that pulse, that's the transit activating in you. Mercury's conjunction with Sirius in Cancer, perfecting on this same calendar day, provided a thread of illumination earlier. A moment of interior knowing. A flash of ancestral clarity, the kind that arrives before the mind can analyze it. Trust what you understood in that cleaner moment. Because the moon in the belly of the whale is not lost, it is being prepared for release. The hours surrounding this transit may bring a concentrated encounter with something you have been moving too fast to feel. This could arrive as an emotional memory, a relationship flashpoint, a physical tightness in the abdomen, because the belly and the gut hold the charge of this transit, and the body often knows before the conscious mind catches up. Expect tightness in the center of your body, an unsettled stomach, a deep animal-level awareness of your own vulnerability. The astrology does not promise disaster, it promises depth. What gets broken by this contact was already weakened. What survives it is proven real. Some of you feel this energy as a restless urgency, an excitement that hums just below the surface, a sense that something enormous is about to break open. Others of you feel it as a quiet dread, an anxiety without a clear object, a background hum of agitation that makes ordinary tasks feel impossible. Both of those responses are correct, Both confirm that you are in contact with what is moving in the sky tonight. The energy needs a container. Without one, the activation disperses into noise. Think back to the last 4 to 6 weeks. Something in that stretch of time asked more from you than felt fair. A stagnation that made no sense given your effort. A frustration that had no clean resolution, only accumulation. That was not randomness, that was compression. The container filling to pressure because something needed weight before it could be released with enough force to actually clear. What felt like punishment was preparation. The difficulty of those weeks was the whale taking you in, and tonight is the moment of the belly. And here is where the energy shifts. Aries, this transit lands in your first house, the house of self, identity, and the face you show the world. You are the one most directly in the belly of this thing. Your instinct right now is to act, to force resolution, to outrun the weight. What Baten Kaitos is asking instead is surrender, not collapse, but a conscious willingness to be changed by what has already arrived at your door. You have been carrying something that no longer belongs to the version of yourself that is coming. Perhaps it is an identity built from survival, the one who pushes through, the one who does not stop, the one who handles it. That identity served you. It kept you moving when stillness felt like danger. But it is costing you something now. In Hellenistic astrology, the nocturnal lord of the water triplicity is Mars, not the moon. When a water star event fires at night, it is Mars who charges the situation with combative intensity. And because tonight's moon in Aries is ruled by Mars, this is not a gentle lunar bath, it is a martial descent. The question Baten Kaitos puts to you is not whether you can feel this, Aries always feels. The question is whether you can remain inside the feeling long enough for it to complete its work, instead of fighting your way to the surface before the transformation has finished. What the depths take, the depths also return, but never quite the same shape. The first house activation under this star contact means your entire persona is being reworked from the inside out. The way you present yourself to the world, the automatic responses that have defined your personality, all of this is being composted in the belly of the whale. Do not make major decisions from survival adrenaline tonight. Do not weaponize this energy to dramatize what is already difficult. The Jonah archetype is yours right now, and Jonah did not escape the whale by fighting it. This is your initiation, Aries. Your willingness is the door. And here is where the energy shifts. Cancer, Baten Kaitos, activates your 10th house, the house of public standing, vocation, and legacy. What is being swallowed here is not you. It is a version of your professional identity that no longer fits. This transit invites you to release an ambition or a role you have been holding on to out of fear rather than genuine calling. You have been working harder than is visible. The recognition has not matched the investment, and that gap has been wearing on you in ways you have not fully named. What is shifting now is not your capability, it is your orientation. The career move or public-facing decision that feels most terrifying right now may be the one most aligned with what comes next. Trust the instinct that surfaced in that moment of Mercury-Sirius clarity earlier today. The 10th house under Baten Kaitos does not ask for more effort, it asks for more honesty about what you actually want your name to stand for. The ambition that belongs to other people's expectations of you, that is what the whale is digesting. What survives will be genuinely yours. The midheaven under this influence is where your true authority gets born, not the authority that comes from playing roles others have written for you, but the authority that emerges when you stop performing competence and start embodying it. This is your recalibration, Cancer. The legacy you build from here is the real one. So far, we have explored the moon's conjunction with Baten Kaitos, a star of descent and depth initiation, and how it fires differently for each sign, activating houses that hold the most unprocessed material in your chart. You can already feel it when the body tightens, before the mind can name what it knows, when the fatigue is older than last week. But there is something we have not addressed yet. What happens when the depth initiation lands specifically in the architecture of your private life, your relationships, and your daily body? And here is where the energy shifts. Libra, your fourth house opens under this transit, the house of roots, family, and private interior life. Something inside the home, or inside the private self, is asking to be acknowledged. Libra's nature is to maintain harmony, to manage the surface, to keep things moving. Baten Kaitos will not allow management tonight. The invitation is to sit with an old family grief, an inherited wound, a domestic truth that has been easier to negotiate around than to face. The grief does not need to be recent to be present. Some of what surfaces under this transit is older than your own memory, inherited through the body, passed through the lineage without being named. Libra is the diplomat, the one who holds the middle ground, the one who absorbs tension so the space around them stays breathable. But that function has a cost, and the fourth house under this star contact is where that cost gets tallied. What you allow yourself to feel in private tonight becomes the foundation of something more honest in the weeks ahead. Not collapse, foundation. The fourth house rules the nadir of your chart, the deepest, most private point. When Baten Kaitos activates this space, it is asking you to stop being the family peacekeeper and start being the family truth teller. This is your reclamation, Libra. And here is where the energy shifts. Capricorn, this transit strikes your seventh house, the house of partnerships, marriage, and open enemies. What is being swallowed is not the relationship itself, it is the version of yourself that has been managing relationships from fear rather than authenticity. You have been carrying other people's emotional weather for longer than you realize. The accommodations you have made to keep peace, to maintain stability, to avoid confrontation, those accommodations have accumulated into a weight that no longer serves anyone involved. Capricorn's gift is structure, but structure without honesty becomes a cage. The seventh house under Baten Kaitos asks you to release the version of partnership where you manage outcomes by controlling your own expression. The relationship that survives your full honesty is the one worth keeping. The one that requires your diminishment to function was already ending, you just have not admitted it yet. This is not about dramatic confrontation or sudden departures. This is about the slow, steady work of showing up as yourself rather than as the version of yourself that keeps things smooth. The belly of the whale for you is the place where you stop managing other people's reactions to your truth. What emerges is a Capricorn who builds relationships on bedrock rather than on the shifting sands of constant accommodation. This is your integrity restoration, Capricorn. And here is where the energy shifts. Scorpio, your second house receives this transit, the house of resources, values, and what you consider worth defending. What is being digested is not your material security, it is the scarcity mindset that has been driving your relationship with money, possessions, and self-worth. You have been operating from a fear-based calculation about what you can afford to lose, what you can afford to want, what you can afford to trust. That calculation has been costing you more than it has been protecting. Scorpio sees through surface appearances to the power dynamics underneath. But sometimes, that X-ray vision becomes a prison when it focuses only on what could go wrong, what could be taken, what could collapse. The second house under Baten Kaitos invites you to release the grip on resources that comes from trauma rather than wisdom. The money you hoard out of fear does not actually create security. It creates the energetic vibration of scarcity, which attracts more scarcity. What you are being asked to trust is not naive optimism. It is your own capacity to generate value, to attract what you need, to rebuild from nothing if necessary. The belly of the whale, for you, is where you remember that your real wealth is not what you can accumulate, but what you can create. What emerges is a Scorpio who operates from abundance consciousness rather than survival consciousness. This is your prosperity recalibration, Scorpio. And here is where the energy shifts. Pisces, this transit activates your 8th house, the house of shared resources, intimacy, and psychological transformation. What is being swallowed is the version of yourself that gives endlessly without boundaries, that absorbs other people's emotional states without discrimination, that mistakes depletion for compassion. You have been carrying psychic material that does not belong to you. Other people's grief, other people's fears, other people's unprocessed trauma. It has been moving through your system as if it were your own, and it has been exhausting you in ways you have not fully acknowledged. Pisces is the sign of dissolution and transcendence, but transcendence without boundaries becomes martyrdom. The 8th house under Baten Kaitos asks you to release the spiritual bypassing that has been masquerading as service. True compassion includes the wisdom to know when your empathy is helping and when it is enabling, when your sensitivity is healing and when it is simply absorbing poison that someone else needs to process for themselves. The belly of the whale, for you, is the place where you learn to feel deeply without drowning in what you feel, where you discover that saying no to someone else's emotional chaos is not cruelty, it is the boundary that allows real intimacy to exist. What emerges is a Pisces who can navigate the depths without losing themselves in them, who can offer healing without sacrificing their own vitality. This is your energetic sovereignty, Pisces. Now notice what is moving in you as you hear this. That is the misuse of this energy, not darkness, but impatience dressed as strength. The shadow behaviors available under this transit include isolating completely without any trusted witness, mistaking emotional overwhelm for a definitive signal about your direction, and bypassing genuine grief with premature positivity. Spiritual bypassing is particularly seductive under a water star moon, the temptation to call the descent a lesson before you have actually been inside it long enough to learn anything. Another shadow pattern is the inflation that can follow depth work. The ego that says, "I have been to the depths, therefore I am wise." The belly of the whale is not a badge of honor, it is a process. The moment you start performing your transformation, instead of living it, you have stepped out of the whale and back into the shallows. Watch for the impulse to make this transit about other people, to project the whale onto your partner, your job, your circumstances, to say, they are the problem that needs to be swallowed. The whale is always about what you are carrying, not what others are doing to you. 3 questions worth asking before any major move in the next 48 hours. First, am I moving toward something or away from something? Second, is this clarity or is this adrenaline? Third, if the urgency were gone tomorrow, would I still make this choice? Do not philosophize from inside the whale before the process is complete. Jonah stayed. He did not escape. He was released. So far, we have moved through the shadow terrain of this transit, the places where the energy misfires, where urgency masquerades as courage, where premature movement aborts the transformation before it can complete. You can already feel it when the impulse to act arrives too fast, when the desire to be finished outpaces the willingness to be inside it. But there is something we have not addressed yet. What do you actually do with this energy tonight? Here is the practice. First, find water. A bath, a bowl, a shoreline, a glass you hold with both hands. Sit with it in silence for longer than feels comfortable. The water is not symbolic decoration, it is a physical anchor for the element this transit is moving through. Cetus is a sea creature. The whale is water. Your nervous system responds to proximity to water in ways that the intellect cannot replicate, and right now your nervous system is what needs tending. Second, write onto paper what you have been carrying that no longer belongs to you. Old grief, outdated identities, survival strategies that served a past self but are constricting the present one. Fold the paper, submerge it, or burn it with intention. The act of naming and writing is not theatrical, it is the process of moving something from the body into language and then out of language entirely. What you can name, you can release. What stays wordless stays lodged. If you choose water, watch the ink dissolve. If you choose fire, watch the smoke carry it upward. The physical transformation of the paper mirrors the energetic transformation happening inside you. Third, place both hands on your belly. Breathe slowly. Acknowledge the strength it took to survive what you have already survived. This is not sentiment. This is the specific location of Baten Kaitos in the body, the belly, the gut, the center. Bringing your own hands, there is a deliberate act of acknowledgement. The body responds to witnessed attention. Stay there for at least 3 minutes. Let your hands warm the space. Let your breathing slow down until it matches the rhythm of waves. And finally, do not make the large decision tonight. Let the transit do its work without immediately converting it into action. The insight that arrives in the belly of the whale is real, but it needs a night of sleep before it becomes a direction. The Jonah who emerged from the whale did not run straight to Nineveh, still dripping. He oriented himself first. Do the same. This is not a ritual of destruction. It is a ritual of honored release. Timing is written in the sky, and tonight the sky says, what you release with intention is lighter than what you carry until it collapses. We are inside the closing phase of the 1-8-month lunar node cycle in Aries and Libra, a cycle that began in mid-2023 and reaches its final arc now. This is harvest and release, not initiation. The collective question this phase poses is not what to begin, but what to finally surrender before the nodes shift and new terms are written entirely. The Aries-Libra axis has been teaching us about the balance between self-assertion and relationship harmony, between individual will and collective cooperation. What we are witnessing now is the final exam, the moment when the lessons of this axis either integrate into wisdom or collapse into old patterns. The nodes will shift to Pisces and Virgo in early 2024, bringing entirely different themes: service versus transcendence, practical devotion versus spiritual escape. But first, this axis must complete its work. Mark this date, comment your sign below. Tell me which house this transit falls in for you, and tell me what has been surfacing. The thread of this conversation matters because what I am seeing in the collective right now is a pattern that goes beyond individual charts, and your sign tells me exactly which piece of that pattern you are holding. Between June 11th and June 13th, the next activation arrives, and the energy shifts from dissent to decision. Sudden recognition and earned authority, or reckless action and public consequence. It's binary. What determines which side you land on is whether you act with disciplined courage or reckless pride. I give you the precise mechanics in the next video. The shore follows every wreck. The survivor emerges, changed, and still breathing. The moon you heard about at the beginning of this reading is not a single night's event. It is a threshold. What you carry through it is a choice. What you set down before you cross is a gift you give to every version of yourself that comes after. Right now, in this moment, as you sit with everything this transit has surfaced, whatever has risen in your body, your memory, your gut sense of what needs to change, let that be enough. You do not need to resolve it tonight. You need to acknowledge it. That acknowledgement is the beginning of the crossing.